The committee chamber was supposed to be routine that morning: policy updates, procedural motions, a few questions for the record. But anyone who had ever seen Representative Jasmine Crockett at work knew routine was not the word for what was about to unfold. She sat near the center of the long table, posture upright, binder open, pen in hand. Across from her sat former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, invited as an expert witness on economic leadership in divided times. Hutchinson wore the polished, practiced smile of a man who had worked decades in politics. It was the kind of smile that said, "I'm comfortable here, and I'll control this conversation." Crockett noticed it the second he walked in. She also noticed the subtle glances he gave her, half measuring, half dismissive, the kind of look reserved for someone you think you can talk past. The first half hour passed in scripted exchanges between Hutchinson and other members. He spoke smoothly about fiscal responsibility, the importance of discipline in government spending, and the need for leaders to earn public trust. On paper, it was uncontroversial. But in tone, there was a quiet arrogance, an assumption that his way of doing things was the only way worth hearing. When the chair recognized Crockett, the room shifted. She adjusted her microphone slowly, flipping through her binder with deliberate care. Her first question wasn't even a question, it was a statement. "Governor, you've spoken about earning trust. In my district, trust isn't earned with speeches, it's earned when people's lights stay on and their rent stays paid. How do you measure trust in a place where folks have been waiting for years just to see clean water come out of their taps?" Hutchinson's smile stayed in place, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Well, Representative, I believe trust starts with leadership," he began, leaning forward, confident. Crockett just watched, expression unreadable, letting him build his own stage. She already knew how she was going to tear it down. Hutchinson leaned in, voice steady, radiating the same confidence he'd carried through decades of press conferences and debates. "Trust starts with leadership," he repeated, his smile widening. "And leadership means making tough calls, even when they're unpopular. It means keeping spending in check and ensuring the government doesn't overpromise what it can't deliver." It was the kind of line that sounded good in a headline, but Crockett wasn't there for soundbites. She tapped her pen against the binder, once, twice, then opened to a page marked in red. "You talk about not overpromising," she said, her tone even. "Yet during your time as governor, over 40% of rural communities in your state didn't have access to reliable broadband. 40%, Governor. That's kids doing homework in parking lots to get Wi-Fi. That's small businesses shutting their doors because they can't process online payments. Would you consider that keeping promises?" For the first time, Hutchinson hesitated. It wasn't long, just a fraction of a beat, but it was enough for the cameras to catch. He shifted in his seat, adjusted his tie, and tried to keep the same easy smile. "Well, Representative, infrastructure projects take time." 7 years, Crockett cut in. "You had 7 years." Her voice didn't rise, but the weight of those words hit harder than a shout. She leaned slightly forward, eyes locked on him. "And while you were making tough calls, my district's residents, just like yours, were making impossible ones. Like choosing between paying their electric bill or buying groceries. Is that the leadership you mean?" The smile faltered, not completely gone, but no longer effortless. It was tighter now, more controlled, as though he could feel the temperature of the room changing. Across the dais, staffers glanced up from their notes. Something in the air had shifted, and Hutchinson could sense it. Hutchinson's fingers interlaced on the table, the polished image still intact, but his voice had lost a sliver of its earlier ease. "Representative, leadership also requires balancing priorities. We can't solve every problem overnight." Crockett leaned in just enough for the mic to catch the low edge in her voice. "Governor, you didn't just fail to solve the problem overnight, you failed to start solving it for years." She flipped to another page, this one highlighted in sharp yellow. "During your tenure, you approved tax breaks for corporations worth over $150 million. At the same time, more than 25% of households in your state reported unsafe drinking water. What I'm asking, what my constituents are asking, is why those corporations got immediate relief while those families are still boiling their water before they can drink it. The hit landed. Hutchinson opened his mouth to answer, but the pause stretched too long. It wasn't hesitation born from ignorance, he knew the facts, but from the awareness that the answer wouldn't sound good outside this room. Economic growth creates resources to address those issues, he said finally, leaning back as if the extra space would shield him. We have to look at the bigger picture. Crockett didn't blink. Bigger than whether people can turn on a faucet and trust what comes out, she asked. The words were sharp but not shouted, the kind of precision that cut cleaner than volume. Across the room, a camera flash went off. Staffers shifted again. That smile, the one Hutchinson had worn like armor since the hearing began, was still there, but it had changed. It wasn't warm anymore, it was stiff, like stone slowly forming where confidence used to be. Crockett let the moment breathe, giving Hutchinson just enough silence to feel it press in. Then she turned a page in her binder with slow, deliberate precision. "Governor," she began, her tone deceptively conversational, "you've described your leadership style as results-driven. So let's look at the results." She read from the page, each word like a measured strike. In 2020, Arkansas ranked 48th in healthcare access, 46th in education funding, and 44th in infrastructure quality. During the same period, you signed legislation that cut millions from public service budgets while expanding subsidies for private industry. She looked up. "Those are your results." Hutchinson drew in a quiet breath, nodding slowly as though he were preparing to counter. "Representative Crockett, governing is about setting priorities." "Exactly," she said, leaning forward, her eyes locked on his. "And your priorities are the problem." The room stilled. Staffers who had been casually taking notes now had their pens frozen mid-word. Even the chair of the committee glanced between them, sensing that this exchange had shifted into something far more pointed than routine questioning. When you prioritize tax cuts for corporations over clean water, over broadband for schoolchildren, over healthcare for working families, you're not just making a budget choice, you're making a moral one. And every family that's been left behind in your state knows exactly what that choice was. Hutchinson's smile was almost gone now, the corners tighter, jaw more rigid. He opened his mouth to respond, but Crockett wasn't finished. "You came here today to talk about national leadership. I'm asking why your record should be the model when the people you were elected to serve are still waiting for the basics." The cameras caught it, the moment his expression shifted from polite confidence to something harder, heavier, like stone settling into place. Crockett didn't wait for Hutchinson to regain his footing. She reached into the side pocket of her binder and pulled out a single sheet of paper, creased, worn at the edges. "Governor, I want to read you something," she said, her voice softer now, but carrying more weight. She glanced down and began. "My name is Linda May. I live in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I work 2 jobs, one at a diner, one cleaning offices. Last winter, our tap water ran brown for 3 weeks. My grandson got sick. We boiled every drop we used. The city told us to be patient. I've been patient my whole life. I'm 67. I just want to know, when do we matter?" Crockett let the words hang in the air. She didn't look at her colleagues. She looked directly at Hutchinson. She wrote that in 2021. She's still boiling her water. Hutchinson inhaled slowly, the smile now completely gone, replaced by a neutral mask. "Representative, no governor can personally solve every infrastructure issue. But you can choose whether to fight for them," Crockett cut in. "You can choose whether you'll sign budgets that fix pipes before they break, or wait until they poison a community." Her voice sharpened. "And forgive me, Governor, but from where I'm sitting, you chose not to fight for her. You chose to fight for someone else." Across the room, a few aides shifted uncomfortably. The press corps at the back began typing faster. Hutchinson's hands were folded tightly now, knuckles pale, as though holding on to composure by grip alone. The transformation was clear, the confident, easy smile that had greeted the hearing was now gone, its absence speaking louder than any rebuttal he might offer. Crockett leaned back just enough to signal she wasn't rushing. The quiet tension in the room was thick now, the kind that made even the clicking of a reporter's keyboard sound loud. She flipped to another tab in her binder, bright orange this time. "Governor Hutchinson," she began, her tone almost calm, "you've been here advocating for national policies, cutting regulations, reducing government spending, letting the private market lead. But your own record shows exactly what happens when those policies are applied." She glanced down at her notes, then looked directly at him. "Arkansas under your leadership was 44th in infrastructure quality, 46th in education funding, 48th in healthcare access. That's your blueprint. And now you're selling it as a model for the country?" Hutchinson's lips pressed into a thin line. He tried to keep his gaze steady, but the shift was there, subtle, telling. "Those rankings don't tell the whole story," he said, the edges of his voice tightening. Crockett didn't miss a beat. "No, they don't," she agreed, "because the whole story is worse. Behind every one of those numbers are families like Linda May's, kids doing homework by the light of a phone screen in McGee because their broadband grant stalled, seniors in Helena driving 40 miles to the nearest clinic because their local hospital shut down." Her eyes narrowed slightly, the words cutting deeper now. "When you talk about leadership, Governor, are you including the people left behind by your decisions? Or just the ones who could afford to smile back at you at fundraisers?" The cameras caught it, the way his jaw set, the faint movement as he swallowed before answering. The smile was gone entirely now, replaced by a tight, unmoving expression. "That's what I thought," Crockett said quietly, her voice steady enough to make the silence that followed feel like a verdict. Crockett let the silence work for her. She didn't rush to fill it, she let it sit there, heavy, until the room itself seemed to lean forward. Then she spoke, her tone lower but sharper. "Governor, I've seen this pattern before. Leaders who say they're about fiscal responsibility and small government, but somehow, those cuts always hit the same places. The neighborhoods without a lobbyist. The counties without a billionaire donor. The people who can't buy a ticket to your next fundraiser." Hutchinson adjusted his pen, but didn't write. "When your policies hurt the vulnerable, that's not efficiency, it's neglect," Crockett continued. "When you defend that neglect by smiling and talking about tough decisions, that's not leadership, it's performance." Across the dais, one or two lawmakers shifted uncomfortably. Not because they disagreed, but because they recognized the mirror she was holding up. She reached into her folder again, pulling out a single black and white photo. It was grainy, clearly taken on a phone, but the image was stark, a rust-stained bathtub, a child's plastic cup on the rim. She slid it forward toward the center of the table so the cameras could catch it. "This is from a home in Marianna, Arkansas, last year," she said evenly. "And while you were cutting taxes for corporations, this little girl's mother was using bottled water to bathe her because the tap was running yellow." Hutchinson's gaze flicked down, then back up, but the change was there, his face no longer just still, but rigid, the way stone sets under pressure. "Governor, you can talk about numbers all day, but when those numbers mean poisoned water, shuttered schools, and communities left in the dark, literally, you're not talking about policy anymore. You're talking about choices. And you made yours." The words landed like a gavel. Crockett leaned in now, no binder, no notes, just her voice. The shift was immediate, everyone in the room knew they were moving from statistics to something raw. "Governor, I grew up watching my mother work double shifts just to keep a roof over our heads. We didn't have much, but we had water we could drink, a school that stayed open, a clinic that didn't shut its doors when people needed it. And I know this, if my mom had lived in the Arkansas you governed, some of those things wouldn't have been there." Hutchinson's eyes narrowed slightly, but he stayed quiet. "You talk about tough decisions," she continued, "but the people living with those decisions aren't the ones sitting behind this microphone. They're kids boiling water before breakfast. They're seniors deciding between paying the light bill and buying their prescriptions. Their families asking, year after year, if they matter. She let the words hang, then dropped the line that would replay on every social feed before sunset. Governor Hutchinson, leadership isn't about smiling through someone else's suffering. It's about ending it. There was a flicker, small but visible, in Hutchinson's expression. Not anger. Not surprise. Just the moment his smile, polite and practiced since the start, hardened completely into something else. Stone. The room stayed quiet. No shuffling papers, no whispered side talk. Just the sound of the cameras clicking, capturing the instant the exchange crossed from political sparring into something that would outlive the hearing. Crockett let her last line breathe, scanning the room slowly before she spoke again. This time, her voice carried a steadier, broader weight, less aimed at Hutchinson alone, and more at everyone watching, in the chamber and far beyond. And let me be clear, this isn't just about Arkansas, she said. This is about every community that's been told to wait their turn, every neighborhood that's been left out of budgets, every town where leaders smile for the cameras while people struggle in the shadows. She shifted her gaze briefly toward the other lawmakers. I've been to red states and blue states. I've walked through rural towns and inner-city blocks. You know what I've seen. The same worn-out houses, the same broken water lines, the same families praying the lights stay on. Poverty doesn't check your party registration before it knocks on your door. Hutchinson's posture was stiff now, his hands folded tightly together on the desk. So when we talk about leadership, I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, if you're smiling while your people suffer, you are failing at your job. That line landed hard. Even a few members of the press raised their eyebrows, typing faster. The clip would play well outside the political bubble because it didn't sound like a partisan jab, it sounded like a universal indictment. Governor Hutchinson, she finished, eyes locked on him one last time, when the smile fades, all that's left is the record. And yours tells the story. You could feel the room exhale, but Hutchinson didn't. His expression stayed fixed, every trace of his earlier ease gone. Exactly the image that would loop across social media before the day was out. Crockett adjusted her mic, her voice steady but carrying the kind of weight that reaches past the marble walls of the chamber. For anyone watching this at home, she began, I want you to remember something, your worth is not defined by the zip code you live in, or the smile a politician flashes when they want your vote. Your worth is measured by your humanity, and your leaders should honor that every single day. She let her eyes sweep across the cameras. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to wait for clean water, or safe schools, or a roof that doesn't leak. Don't let them tell you your pain is acceptable just because it's not in the headlines. If you're boiling water, if your school's roof is caving in, if your clinic shut down, you matter, right now, today. Her gaze cut back to Hutchinson for the final time. Governor, you can turn a smile into stone when you're confronted with the truth, but the truth doesn't go away. And neither will the people demanding it. With that, she closed her binder, folded her hands, and leaned back. The hearing room was silent, no side conversations, no paper shuffling. Just the faint hum of cameras capturing the moment's stillness. Outside, the clip was already being trimmed down, subtitled, and uploaded. By nightfall, it would be everywhere, a freeze frame of Asa Hutchinson's tightened expression, and Jasmine Crockett's unwavering stare. For those who saw it, the message was clear, this wasn't just a political exchange. It was a public record of accountability, delivered without flinching. Leadership isn't about keeping your composure while people suffer, it's about using your position to end that suffering. If you can look into the eyes of the people you serve, hear their struggles, and still choose inaction, then no amount of charm, no perfectly timed smile, will hide the truth of your record. The cameras will stop rolling, the headlines will fade, but the people you left behind will remember. And so will I. Because my job isn't to make you comfortable, it's to make sure they're not invisible.